Welcome, everyone.
Hi. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Everyone watching, thank you for being here. We are going to start a roundtable in just a few seconds. We're just waiting for all the participants to come out. Fantastic. And we are all here. All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to everybody watching wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We are so excited to share this session with you, a roundtable where we'll be discussing VR games to support empathy and compassion in Nigeria. Really excited because I believe this project that we're discussing is really the first of its kind in this region. So truly groundbreaking stuff. To get us started, I'll introduce myself. I'm Judith Okonkwo. I am a collaborator and co-investigator on this project. I also run Emisi 3D, which is an XR ecosystem developer on the African continent. And I'll let my colleague and fellow collaborator, Kat, introduce herself next. Kat?
I love this conference. This is like my 14th or 15th Game for Change conference, and I'm super thrilled to be here. At Marist College, which is a university in New York. And I have been researching and designing games for empathy for the last 15 years plus. And I just released a book a few weeks ago called We the Gamers, and it's about teaching, using games to teach ethics and civics. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you so much, Kat. Okay, so we move the baton across to Eugene. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Judith. Glad to be here. Thank you, everyone, for coming to our session. My name is Eugene Ohu. I'm a faculty at the Lagos Business School, where we run a VR lab called the Virtual Human Computer Interaction Lab. And that covers my research interest areas, which is human-computer interaction, the intersection between people and technology, but especially how it contributes to human flourishing, building of characters, virtues, one of examples of this. So fantastic to be here, and we're happy to be here to tell our story.
Thank you, Eugene. Cynthia, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Judith. Hi, everyone. So my name is Cynthia, and I work here at the VHCI lab. I'm a sociologist, but fascinated by VR, like very. And this is my first time in the Games for Change conference. Excited to be here and to share our story. Thanks, Judith.
Thank you, Cynthia. Adela, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm Adeola. I'm a psychologist, and everything virtual reality just amazes me. I also work at the VHCI lab, and so excited to be here with everybody.
Thanks, Adela. Marenika?
Hi everyone, my name is Morenike. I work here at the Virtual Human Computer Interaction Lab as a research assistant. I am also a psychologist and who is also very, very interested in VR, using technology to improve lives. This is my first time at the Games for Change conference, and I'm really, really excited about it. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Marenika. And Akela?
Hi everyone, my name is Ikeola. I am also a research assistant at the VHCI lab. And I'm excited to be here. This is also my first time, so I hope that you learn one thing or two through our story. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for the great introductions. We have so much to get through today, so I think we'll dive right in. But I thought it'd be very helpful to set some context around the project we'll be describing. So Eugene, could you go ahead and please give us an overview of this research project?
Thank you, Judith. While I get my slide up, one interesting overview, I guess, is I don't know how many people noticed what happened, that how all the rooms got slightly dark, right? So one of the realities that we have to deal with in Africa. So there was a power cut, but fortunately we have a backup for the internet. All right, so thank you. Judy, can you see my screen?
I can indeed, yes.
You can see the slides. Okay, thank you very much. So this project is sponsored by Templeton World Charity Foundation. And then through one of their initiatives, which is the Global Innovations for Character Development. I mean, they set up this initiative to, if you like, it was the first of its kind to promote character strengths worldwide. And then we got a grant of $234,000 to pursue the project, which is teaching children empathy and compassion through virtual reality games. And I would say that Templeton World Charity Foundation is an amazing body. I mean, and then I say that deliberately because not only did they fund this project, but they've also supported us with training, network, and so on. I thought it would be interesting to give an overview of the game so that when we talk about our learnings and then challenges, you may make a bit more sense. Now, Nigeria is the largest country, as you know, largest country in Africa with approximately 200 million people. In Nigeria, there are at least 250 ethnic groups, more than 500 languages. You already see that that's a setting for heightened tribalism, nepotism, favoritism, discrimination, especially when there is no empathy. And then this tension that is exacerbated by struggle to control the natural resources in Nigeria led to the civil war between 1967 and 1970 that led to the death of more than 6 million people, among which were 1 million children. So these ethnic tensions have continued since after the Civil War hostilities. So we decided to see what we can do, considering that the teenage population in Nigeria make up, if you like, approximately 35 to 40% of our population of these 200 million people. How can we teach people to take the perspective of another ethnic group so as to, on the one hand, appreciate their identity, and then when these other ethnic groups are suffering, share their sufferings, and then go the extra mile and decide to help. So to this end, our project consists of 2 studies. One study is a game jam, a VR game jam, but which begins with participants having conversations about identity to get to appreciate their unique identity and the identity of the others. In this case, ethnic identity or be it religious identity. And then in the VRU game jam, also conceptualizing and designing a VRU game based on these conversations. And then to do this stage of the project, we're done with it. To do that, and then we use Alice 3D to build the 3D environment, which they then viewed in Oculus Quest 2. But then the main study, the study 2, which is what we're going to talk about today, is to use a professionally designed VRU game to see whether it can be the medium for the perspective taking that would lead to empathy and compassion. So our VRU game is called Connected Spaces. We are targeting teenagers between the ages of 13 and 18. And in the game, we have characters representing the 4 major ethnic groups: Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, and then we have a 4th one representing the others who are really in the majority. Well, majority, about 30%. And then it takes place in a school environment, in a school setting, and then there are scenes in the bathroom, there are scenes that take place in the classroom, there are scenes that take place in the playground. And then there will be incidences of discrimination based on identity. And as we'll explain more, there will be there are three qualities of virtual reality we're trying to take advantage of. One of them, which VR shares with many of the technologies, is the ability to observe observe another person. So can observing someone facing discrimination lead to empathy and compassion? And then another is embody. So VR would allow you to embody. So embody is the other one. And then the third, so there are 3 different types of VR experiences. The third one is using a role model, perhaps observing a role model so as to emulate that role model. Can that lead to empathy and compassion? So really, and then at the end, we're going to compare changes in empathy and compassion across these 3 VR expressions over several months. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're working towards. Thank you, Judith.
Thank you, Eugene. That was a great overview. And I think it begins to hint at some of the complexity that had to be considered in carrying out this project, and particularly in creating the virtual reality game. And I'd like us to start to explore that just a little bit more. So the first kind of issue to explore for me would be looking at balancing sort of like what might be competing interests with fun and engagement, and then the learning outcomes. And Cynthia, could you talk a little bit more about kind of like the tensions between the two and how you resolve that in designing and developing the VR game?
All right, so clearly we want to see changes in empathy and compassion among the players when they play our game. Now, the most important pathway to get through to empathy is through storytelling. A story that evokes characters, kind of capture the different ethnic groups in Nigeria. And we hope that from hearing this emotional story, they will learn to empathize with other ethnic groups. But will they enjoy the experience? That's the question. Like, how do we make this emotional story to be able to capture the attention of our players, to make them empathize? How do we make it fun? It was a bit difficult for us, and we had to consider what appeals to our audience, which are teenagers. So we had to consider what appeals to them, and we included them in the game. Like, for instance, jewelry and shiny things that would attract, that would attract the player, and trophies and colorful acts like the moon, the sun. We also included phrases that the teenagers will be used to hearing while they're on the playground or whether they're in the classroom, funny comments and all that. And we also put in a mirror in the game and hope that, the player is going to enjoy the experience of interacting with a 3D version of themselves. And we have not actually figured it all out on how to balance these things. We are still in the process of getting there. I think, Judith, I think we're still in the process of getting there.
Thank you, Cynthia. Yes, I can imagine that, it's certainly a learning process as you start to implement all that you've learned so far from engaging with the teenagers and implementing it. And Ikeola, is there anything like you would like to kind of like add to that, specifically looking at how you interacted with teenagers to get their perspectives and incorporate that into the design?
Yes, thank you very much, Judith. So, like Cynthia said, we're figuring it out as we go. However, one of the things that we also did was to, in balancing the fun and the engagement and the learning outcomes, was to embed learning in the goals. For instance, you have in the game where the player would look for a seat or make a new friend, or try to give himself or herself, try to give a pep talk. And in this, you find that the player is learning to, look at things from, or puts himself in another person's perspective. So what we want to teach is empathy and compassion, right? So we want as you're playing in your interactions, as the teenager is playing in the interactions, you're learning to put yourself in another person's shoes. Like Eugene was saying when he mentioned the 3 parts of the game in virtual reality. So we have the embody, we have the observation, and we have the role model. So in the embody session, in the embody module of the game, you're going to be playing as another person. So I'm sure this is going to be fun for the kids, where you're from another ethnic group and you're playing as another ethnic group. For instance, you're Yoruba and you're playing as a Hausa person. So you have a Hausa name or you have a Yoruba name, as the case might be. Another thing we tried to do was that we made sure that in every of the comments, it was reinforcing good behavior. For instance, in the role model scene, where there are feedbacks from the role model. When you make a choice or you make a decision, the role model is telling you if this decision is good or if this decision is not so good. Why not try another one? So in this process of trying to figure it out, trying to move around, and also the good thing about, so the very awesome thing about virtual reality, how immersive it is, can also make the player just in quote lose herself and just be all in the game, trying to play and enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kel. And actually, you've just hit on something that has just come up in the chat as a question, which we will explore later, about can the immersive environment also distract from purpose? But let me quickly move on. I mean, you talked a little bit about, this focus on empathy and compassion. And we know that, there have been skills that have been created in other parts of the world measuring these traits, if you will. Eugene, could you tell us a little bit about the Nigerian experience trying to define these concepts and think about measuring them?
Yeah, I mean, before we even got to the Nigerian experience, I think one of the first challenges, because we spent several months trying to do, if you like, background work, conceptual clarity. So what is empathy? What is compassion? I mean, definitely they are not synonymous, and then come to realize that empathy in itself can even be morally neutral, if you like. A sadist can be empathetic to the extent of understanding what the other person is going through or even visualizing it. But then we added pro-social dimension, compassion. So they are different, right? And then another thing we had to get a good grip of was also what theory of change were we to know that there has been improvement in compassion in the participants, in this case, the team. So one of them was measuring the component virtue. If you measure the components of the virtue, you can, what components in this time, we're focusing on 3 components. Virtue perception, in this case, perception of empathy and compassion, virtue knowledge, and then virtue reasoning. Okay, so conceptual clarity, and then also what theories of change. And then this would later on then influence the design of the game. For instance, building in moral dilemmas to capture virtue reasoning, building in instances where you check whether they perceived the virtue or not. So in short, therefore, conceptual clarity, what is empathy and compassion? What are the differences? How do we measure it?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eugene.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, did you want to say a bit more?
No. But I'm sure I'm sure my colleagues would have things to add on this, because this was a key part of what we have been doing for several months.
Fantastic. Okay, so Adela, could you shed some more light on this, and particularly that last element that Eugene mentioned? So looking at empathy and compassion now, and how you actually get to address and measure it.
Yeah.
Hello, Adele, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
All right. All right. Okay, so I was saying that yes, we had to go through the process of understanding what exactly empathy and compassion is. But another unique thing that we took into consideration is the fact that it's not just any kind of game, it's virtual reality. And with virtual reality comes a lot of benefits and perks that it gives us in terms of how more immersive it is, and the realistic scenarios that we can paint to the player as they experience it. And empathy and compassion just come to life inside VR. They take a whole new shape in VR because when you take the characteristics of embodiment, I mean, the ability for a player to assume the physical properties of an avatar inside virtual reality, and you play on that with the story that we have that Eugene had shared earlier, we see that it's like straight away for them to take the perspective. We're able to get the version, we're able to come up with the version of, okay, participants, players in the game can actually embody character, be a teenager that is actually experiencing this, and that way they are able to internalize taking the perspective of another person. And then you see the area of compassion, the pro-social aspects of compassion, where in the game there's the part where they are observing, right? Observing another person being discriminated against, and this way they are able to be in a position to get the sensation and get the experience of doing something to help somebody who is in a difficult situation, which was another version that we had in the story. So really, in virtual reality, everything we did ultimately was to bring it to life and add a body to it in virtual reality. So, and then one other thing that was quite unique that we were able to do was also in understanding, okay, what exactly are the components of empathy, of a virtue, for example. Our theory of change talks about virtues and how they can be measured in terms of reasoning and perspective, taking perception of the virtue itself. So how can the players inside the game take the perspective of another person? How can they perceive it? How can they go through that process up until when they're thinking about the virtues of empathy and compassion itself? So that was the journey majorly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adela, and thank you. Kind of like that last word that you ended on, perspective taking. Thinking about this project as a whole, one thing that definitely played a factor was the cross-cultural elements, as we have a team that is fairly international, and that brings with it different perspectives. So, I mean, the focus of this whole project, as Eugene so ably described, is really looking at how we tackle bias and discrimination in some way. Kat, could you tell us a little bit about experiences or, I suppose, occurrences of bias and discrimination in the US?
Sure. So bias and discrimination are really difficult concepts to understand, let alone to be able to represent in something as complex as a game. And I may have faced bias and discrimination in the United States, but I haven't faced all different kinds of bias. And I have a very, limited view based on who I am as an individual going through the world. But here I am attempting to create a game that represents bias in Nigeria, a country that I have very little personal experience with and that I've never been to. And so that's really challenging. I mean, that's it's a little scary, actually, to be able to authentically represent bias in Nigeria. And so, as you recall, we are developing a series of virtual reality games to help people understand what it's like to be someone else and the kinds of biases they might face. And so the way that we're setting it up is that if you are Hausa, for instance, you would play in the game as someone who's Yoruba or Igbo. And then vice versa, if you are Yoruba, then you would play as someone who's Hausa or Igbo, and you would experience the biases that that person might experience. But that led to some challenges for me from an American context, because first of all, I didn't have any kind of personal understanding of what it means to be Hausa or Yoruba or Igbo or any of the 250 ethnic groups in Nigeria. So I would ask the team about it, but I really didn't have any personal experience or understanding of the complexities of the biases in Nigeria. And then the second big challenge I had was that in America, it's very much like intersectional, right? So you might be Chinese and Cuban, or you might be Black and Jewish, and all of your different identities might be ways that you might experience bias. So someone who's Black and Jewish might deal with anti-Semitism and also might deal with racism. And that's something that, is very unique to an individual. And so I didn't understand, like, well, how is it that if you're Hausa, you're not also possibly Yoruba and Igbo and experiencing those biases? And so what I found out was that if your father is Hausa, then you're Hausa. And if your father is Igbo, then you're Igbo. And it doesn't matter if other family members might be Yoruba. And so that was like a really big paradigm shift for me in understanding biases in a Nigerian context. So what I did was I listened. I really tried to ask questions. I thought about the human themes of bias and injustice, and being able to design a VR game, thinking about themes of what it feels like to be excluded, what it feels like to experience cruelty, but also what it's like to experience empathy and compassion. And I tried to design for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kat. Cynthia, why don't you tell us a little bit more about this from the Nigerian context?
Okay, so growing up in Nigeria, I have never faced ethnic discrimination, but I've heard experiences of people that do. And trying to create a game that depicts ethnic discrimination, we had to turn over to these people by hearing their stories. So we interviewed teenagers and adults from the different ethnic groups, the Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, and other minority groups that we grouped as others. And we got to find out that, okay, the way bias is manifested, we versus me, that's like the child of my mother. If someone is from the same ethnic group as you take it that this person is a child, is your mother's child, even though you don't have same mother. And if someone is from another ethnic group, now we are not family. So among teenagers, so we're beginning to, how does this play out among teenagers? We find that it plays out from the football field, for example. Maybe you want to play a game and you have to pick teams, and you hear me say, oh, I want Miami, and they're from my ethnic group. So that's how you see this favoring a person because you are from the same ethnic group. Now, them calling each other, you will get like some kind of names, of which these are from stereotypes that maybe
Cynthia?
they have heard around there, is perceived not to be Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. We were losing you a little bit, but I think we can hear you now.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, it's okay. You can just go ahead.
All right. The Hausa ethnic group, for instance, they are perceived to be uneducated. So imagine seeing an Hausa boy in a secondary school, and people keep telling this child, "You people don't know anything. You are not educated. You are not supposed to be in school." Now, these are stereotypes that these children heard from either their parents or significant others. And you also see that some ethnic group, they are not comfortable eating the kind of food that they eat in their ethnic group outside. You see, they make fun of this food and even make fun of the way they speak. So this is how ethnic discrimination here in Nigeria is being manifested among teenagers.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. And I think kind of like that description of like bias and ethnic discrimination specific to Nigeria really brings us rather nicely to looking at how to design and make decisions to make sure that, you know, the game is culturally relevant. Morenike, I know you kind of like spearheaded along with your colleagues in the lab creating the story for this game. Could you tell us a little bit about that process?
Okay, so I would first of all say it was quite an interesting process, and it was quite a process because we had to go make some deliberate decisions. You know, we wanted our game to be something that would portray the reality of a Nigerian teenager. We didn't just want to create a game, but we wanted it to actually portray that reality they face every day. So one of the decisions we made, like my colleague Cynthia said, was that we decided to interview teenagers from the different ethnic groups in Nigeria, Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, and others. So we wanted to get themes that will guide us in creating our story script for the game. So we wanted to know what are those discrimination they've experienced that is similar to them, to most of them. What are those biases they have, or what are those biases they've learned? So we noticed that while interviewing the teenagers, most of them would tell you that this is the type of discrimination they've experienced or they've seen others experience. And most of them will tell you that, oh, they learned, maybe their parent told them this, they heard this from their moms, from their dad. So we also realized that we also had to interview adults themselves, because most of this discrimination and biases, this teenagers spoke about, most of them were what they've learned from the significant others in their life. So we also interviewed teenagers just to get insight into those common stories that people tell. So we learned a lot from these interviews we held. We learned a lot about, especially with the teenagers, we learned that most of this discrimination will occur in class while they're at play. And even though some of them laugh about it, you know, it has gotten to a point where it seems normal, but when you ask them, they'll tell you they know that, oh, it's actually usually painful. So this guided us in forming our storyline for the game. And another very important decision we made was that we decided to go to visit some schools. So because our game, we are going to be doing it for, we are going to be implementing our project with children, with teenagers in public schools in Nigeria. So we visited some public schools, and it was very interesting because we had the opportunity to interact with some children, and we took pictures of the schools because we really wanted our game to, we wanted it to be very realistic. So we took pictures of their buildings, we took pictures of their classrooms, it helped us in making decisions as important as their hairdo, the hairstyle they make, how do they dress, how is their classroom like, how is their environment like, how is their playground like, up to those little details, because we just wanted it to be culturally relevant. We wanted something that, they could relate to it. We wanted the same structures they have presently to be depicted in our game. So this guided our decisions in forming a storyline. So while we were, another interesting thing I would like to talk about is, the process of just thinking on a story. It wasn't something we did in one day. It took us months, like thinking about a story. We wanted something that, apart from it just we wanted to teach empathy and compassion. Apart from that, we also wanted something that would really, really appeal to them, will appeal to their emotions, something they can relate to. So it was a whole process of really brainstorming with the team members. And so when it came to gamifying our story, we had to look into, what are those things we can put into this story to make it be very like something they can really engage with. So that was where we started looking at having a reward system in the game. Kat, our colleague, helped us in also gamifying the story. So I would say it was really a daunting and interesting process for us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Morenike. And you mentioned like the tremendous work that Kat did gamifying that story. So Kat, could you tell us a little bit about that process? Kat, we can't hear you.
That's fine. Sorry, everybody went out for a moment, but we're all back, so that's great. So here I am again. I've never been to Nigeria, but I'm helping to design a game that takes place in Nigeria and should be authentic, should be culturally relevant. And look, like teens are gonna know, like they're gonna know if something even a little bit doesn't seem culturally relevant. And even if I was designing a game that took place in a school in the United States, I would still be biased by my own cultural understanding of school, like my own experiences, but then also TV shows like Saved by the Bell or Clueless, or even games like Life is Strange. Like you're just, you can't help but be biased by what you understand of school. So as you recall, we're creating a VR game, and we are trying to put the player in, quote unquote, the shoes of a person in the embodied version of that. So for example, I was thinking of, placing some of the game in a bathroom where the player could look in a mirror and realize that they are embodying a person like Amina Usman, who is Hausa. And then maybe part of the game would then be, they're going to the classroom. But then I realized, like, wait, like, I don't even know what bathrooms look like in a Nigerian school. Like, do they have mirrors? Are there stalls? Is there graffiti in the stalls? Like, I have no cultural context for that. And then, like, if you're gonna, place students in a classroom and you want them to walk past some rows of students, are there even rows in a classroom in Nigeria? Where does the teacher stand? What does the teacher say? What do the students say? They speak English, but there's going to be certain words and phrases that are relevant to, even just teenagers anywhere that teenagers would use. And so what I did was I basically tried to write what I call a placeholder script. And so I would write something like this. So the teacher says, "Hello, class. We have some new students in our school. One of the new students is Amina Usman. Amina, will you take your seat?" And then I would say in like brackets, "Please rewrite this for a Nigerian context." And like for every single line, I was like, "Please rewrite this." And so the team would rewrite it, and it would sound way better. And this is what they would write, something like this. So the teacher says, "Good morning, class." And then the student says, "Good morning, Ma. You are welcome to JSS 3A. God bless you. Amen." And then the teacher says, "A new student is joining our class today. Her name is Amina Usman. Amina, find a seat and sit down." And so, their version, obviously much more culturally relevant. And that's how, we kept like going through drafts and drafts and drafts to make it as relevant as possible.
Thank you, Kat. My goodness, what a process. So we have talked for quite a while. We do want to get in a bit of time to take questions from the audience. So we're just going to address one last topic in discussion before we then open up for your questions. And Eugene, I'm coming to you because I just want you to tell us just a little bit about the technical challenges of developing a VR game in Nigeria. I know it's been quite the experience for the team.
Yeah, I mean, we had support from Templeton Foundation. So as far as the project was concerned, money was not a problem. But then there were problems that became more serious than money. For example, purchasing the equipment that we needed for the game development. As you know, neither Facebook nor Alienware sell to Nigeria. So we had to do a roundabout way that took time and cost money. So you had to buy the equipment, ship to a US address, and eventually export to Nigeria. In terms of time, this took more than 3 months. In terms of cost, we paid over $3,000 in shipping costs. Then another major challenge was in building. So I used to joke with my colleagues, by the way, talking about the shipping, was that buying such equipment from the US to Nigeria is almost like stealing, because you're just going out of roundabout with. Anyway, building the game itself was another huge challenge. We had decisions to make. Should we buy a game off the shelf or build ours? Definitely buying off the shelf was out of the question because we have our own unique story to tell. And then building ours, well, okay, fine. Building ours by contracting someone, which was going to be way beyond our budget, or building ourselves. So we decided to build ourselves. And then that meant, for instance, the 3 parts of the development. The VR development itself using Unity 3D, which is what we're doing. The 3D modeling of the characters, rigging the body and face, and then texturing, and then animation. We had a hard time finding local talents. At a point, and Judith, we ran a 10-week boot camp because there were people with smart trains of Unity 3D knowledge here. So put them together to see whether, while we're pursuing our project, we could help develop the ecosystem. Well, to an extent, yes. I mean, from this boot camp, we got 2 developers who kickstarted the project, such that for example, the choice system, the game mechanics that we're using now were developed by them. But of course, we had to outsource some of the parts. For example, developing the 3D characters. I mean, we have an in-house 3D modeler, but then we outsourced the greater portion of it. And then animation was another kettle of fish. I mean, we had people submitting applications, but yeah, it didn't cut it. Fortunately, we got a loan of a Rococo motion capture suit from Gannon University. Thank you, IK, if you're listening. Gannon University lent us a Rococo motion capture suit, which I think you will see behind Adeola there. And then so with that, we did the body animation. And then with the iClone facial mocap applications, okay, because it uses the true depth camera system of the iPhone. We took care of the facial animation. So that's been more or less it. But of course, I mean, there was no time to talk about remember, we're doing all of this during the COVID, okay? Rainy would have told you that we had to build our own irradiation chamber using some DIY things, and then to continue working, and then we all made sure that we got vaccinated, so yeah. So now the equipment are here, and then hopefully we'll finish soon. All right, Judith.
Thank you so much, Eugene. And yes, I can really testify to the journey that it is to engage with these technologies on much of the African continent, from equipment to talent. Okay, so I want to then open it up so we can address some of the questions, because unfortunately we just got a few minutes left, but it's been such a fascinating discussion. So please, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll try and address as many as we can. I'm just going to go straight to the first question that is on the screen for me. And Torsen Khan asks, have you also done impact assessments of using VR for fostering empathic emotions in their real life? Has it led to social action?
Maybe I can just give a quick reply to that, and then my colleagues can add. So there are two studies we're doing. The first study is the game jam. We're finished with that. So it's going to run over 6 months. We're going to do follow-up to see if there's persistence in the effects. The gameplay itself, as a result of playing the VR game, we have not done. It's a longitudinal study over several months, okay, then to follow them up and then see that. So hopefully that's a question we should be able to answer in the near future.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Eugene. Does anybody else want to add anything to that? Well, I thought that was quite comprehensive. Okay, so let's tackle the next question that I see coming up. And this may be more a comment than a question, but this is from Avi Payne. Sounds like the key challenges essential in different but similar contexts like Brazil, India, the Middle East, and also, frankly, especially US and EU, where so many clashing cultures need this core skill set, and the craft of media, tech stories, experience delivery can be a powerful and difficult/long process, one to orchestrate and navigate. Wonderful this is going on in Nigeria for unpacking and progressing. I'm progressing in all this sounds like. I might have got the last bit wrong. But I think just a comment there on the key challenges that have been discussed here and similar contexts in other parts of the world. Okay, so Abby's just updated. Give me 1 second and I'll just read this. So he then goes on to ask about the evaluation and efficacy side of the design and research planning or project guiding. Would very much go into qualitative designs, especially how was the follow-up and further planning cycle process gone in iteration? So I think this is a question asking about planning cycles going forward with the design and iterations. Also talking about using social science methods more. So thinking about looking at the research and design process for this. I'm looking to see if there's a specific ask here. Avi, is there a particular question that you would like answered? Okay, so I'll just wait.
Okay, so now I'm going to cast around now, and hopefully I can address one or two of these. I mean, the reference to perhaps talking about iterations, was this a reference? Maybe you can give him through the moderation panel, let him speak.
Avi, would you request to come up? So perhaps you could just ask the question directly, if you wouldn't mind. Well, yes, here you are. All right. Welcome, Avi.
Oh, hi. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, that was a little bit of a wordy question or just framing of that. But I'm curious, especially for topics like empathy and compassion. Sorry, you can hear me, right? Or
yes, we can. Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yeah, yes.
All the tech with this, you got to make sure. I know there's this skew a lot of times towards trying to do like quantitative and survey and that kind of thing, evaluation. I'm just wondering, in terms of your planning for future, if what you're looking at is like toward more the qualitative and or possibly even more into like the arts and design side, emphasis of like workshopping with your participants and things like that to find out what worked and how, or what you're a little more of what I think Eugene you were talking about, or somebody was talking about. Sorry, I'm seeing all the faces here, but about the future plans for figuring out what worked and next iterations of your project.
I think I get you now, but correct me if at some point I go off work. So how do we know change has occurred, right?
Yeah.
And then now exactly. And in the future with respect to empathy and compassion. So Some of the things that we have done for the game jam are the things we have planned for the gameplay. We're using quantitative measures of empathy and compassion on the one hand, but then after each intervention, we also have qualitative measures such as focus groups and interviews with the participants. And then also, we also have them solve a dilemma, present them stories, scenarios, and see how they resolve this. Okay, and then there are different versions of these scenarios that we present to them at different times, even though the central pattern of the stories are the same. But being kids, hopefully they don't catch this. But then with this, the idea is a qualitative measure to also catch change. Because truth be told, I mean, at the beginning, we were a bit scared. Fortunately, we're seeing good results after the game jam. At the beginning, we were a bit scared whether, considering the age of the participants, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, how well they know themselves, and whether we would even see changes, okay? So we therefore deliberately built in qualitative measures, interviews, focus groups, and then these were more nuanced, okay? So hopefully with the mixed methods, we hopefully will stand a better chance of seeing if change has occurred. I don't know if that addresses it a bit.
Awesome, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eugene. So just 2 more questions before we wrap up. We've had Anginette waiting. So I'm just going to bring her up to the panel to ask a question directly. I think we might have lost her. Okay. Tosom, you were going to come up. Are you still going to come up, or shall we just read out your question? No. Oh, here you are. All right.
Hello. Hi. I'm sorry I had to come and ask the question to know how to explain my message. But I'm Torsam. I'm studying at Chrysler University, and I'm doing a master's thesis on using empathy games in the nonprofit sector. So, having experience work in the nonprofit sector, especially in South Asia and regions like Africa, like conflict affected regions, I have first-hand experience. I was in the marketing communications with the United Nations, and in my experience, we did a lot of empathy marketing, as you say, so capturing stories of human resilience or human challenges and using them as empathy building tools, which led to social actions. You see a lot of these case studies and stories that focus on empathy. So do you think that these video games and VR technologies are a much better marketing for empathy building? Because that's the essence of the nonprofit marketing communications, right? They want to build empathy so that people can read and understand people perspective and understand what they're going through. And my second question is, why specifically VR? Can this, the work you've done, can this be done using traditional video games with strong narrative and using story to drive the game? Or, I mean, in your research, does VR show a much better result? I hope you get the question. So.
Thank you.
The question is clear. Judith, maybe I'll let someone else give a shot.
Of course.
Okay. I'll try best to answer that. So there's extensive research in terms of virtual reality and how immersion, its immersive tendency, the properties of immersion that it offers as compared to other media ways of sharing the information like normal analog or digital games. Virtual reality, in terms of how it enhances social presence, was one thing that was striking for us, because we want people to take perspective, which is what essentially empathy is, and compassion to an extent. So we want them to be able to put themselves in the shoes of other people. So virtual reality was offering the most immersive platform that currently exists in terms of augmented reality and how you can use that for games. So that was like a key factor for why we considered virtual reality as the medium for it. And if you also remember when Eugene initially spoke, he talked about our study being in two parts. So we have the game jam, which was essentially more about like the structure was more like a workshop and activities, how a game jam would run. But instead, the focus now was more on them learning these virtues and not just building the game, not just the end result of creating a game at the end. So there was the game jam version of it, and then there's the virtual reality part of it. So
thank you, dear.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You know, obviously perspective taking and empathy are two different things, so they are related, and you know, being able to take on someone's perspective might help us in enhancing empathy. But that's a question of like, how do we grow that? You know, how do we enable people to practice it? Well, there's lots of ways. I mean, we have so many experiences throughout our lives that might enhance or hinder empathy, including, you know, being friends with someone, being in a family, going to work. I mean, there's so many different ways. Could VR also be another way to support that? Could working on a game jam and designing with other people be another way to enhance empathy? These are open questions. We're still trying to grapple with the complexities of it. And so we went in trying to understand that, you know, not saying that this is the only way or the best way, but if it is a way, what are the benefits and limitations of using VR to support empathy and compassion?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kat. Tosin, I hope that has answered your question. And ladies and gentlemen, I do have to say we are now at the top of the hour and we do have to close out this roundtable. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And hopefully, if you want to interact with the members of the roundtable, they'll be attending other events during this festival. So thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.